column number 1 on 35A2. What we're discussing here in the Gemara is where do we see in the pasuk itself that the pasuk is alluding to the fact that pre-Eitz Hadar, the Torah says, I want you to take this pre-Eitz Hadar, that pre-Eitz Hadar refers to an etrog, right? We said, we know that pre-Eitz Hadar, we know it's an etrog. This has been our Masorah, this has been our tradition. From Moshe Rabbeinu has told the people from the time of Moshe, the Jewish people have been taken in etrog. But the question is, the Gemara wants to say that it's not only that Moshe told us pre-Eitz Hadar means etrog, but that also we could see from the verse itself, right? The pasuk, when the pasuk tells you on Sukkot to take an etrog, it does not say take an etrog. What does the pasuk say? Exactly what you said. Pre-Eitz Hadar, the fruit of the tree Hadar. So Hadar, we translated a beautiful tree. That's the basic translation. Would sound like Hadar. Like Hadar is the language of beauty. So the simple translation of the pasuk. Welcome back, Max. The simple translation of the pasuk is a beautiful fruit. A beautiful fruit, like this man Max is a beautiful fruit, and a beautiful fruit is very vague on what's the beautiful, what is that, name that tune, name that beautiful fruit. So we know the Torah was given pre-Eitz Hadar, exactly, a beautiful fruit. But we know the Torah was given with an explanation. Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai, was on the mountain of Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. And the Smag, one of the great rabbis, writes in his introduction to a sefer on mitzvot that what Hashem was teaching Moshe, the explanation of the Torah, the laws of the Torah for those 40 days and the 40 nights that Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai. What was he doing there 40 days and 40 nights? He was learning the Torah. So that's the explanation of the Torah. But the Gemara feels that there's also, we could see in the verse itself, in the Torah, in the written Torah, how it alludes, that you could see it alludes to that it means an etrog. Even though the way the Torah writes it just says pre-Eitz Hadar, which, where do you see etrog in those words? You only see a beautiful fruit. So the Gemara gave multiple answers yesterday, that the word Hadar, you could also read it Hadar, a fruit that remains on the tree for multiple years, that stays up there for 2 to 3 years. The only fruit, and the only fruit that does that, has that quality, is etrog. Or the Gemara says Hadar could also be read Hadir, the only fruit that you have, that when the new etrog tree is coming up, the new fruit of the young tree is coming up, the old fruit is still hanging around, it still remains on the tree. It's like a pen that contains animals large and small. That's unique about etrog, that remains on the tree for 2 to 3 years. And when the young ones are up, the old are still there. So the Gemara gives multiple answers. Where do we see it's alluded to in the written Torah, in the Torah Succah? Max, is it clear what we're saying here? Now the Gemara is going to give the final answer of where do we see that it refers to etrog. Where do we see in the word pre-Eitz Hadar, where do we see etrog? So now the Gemara is going to suggest another answer. That's where Ben Azai comes in. He says, Al Tikri Hadar. The word Hadar, El Idur. You could read it as Idur. Now, Idur is water. So Hadar is connected to the word Idur. And the uniqueness about the etrog tree, that this is a tree that needs both the rainwater and both irrigation water. You have to also feed it. It's not only that it's not sustained enough by just having the rainwater. You personally have to go ahead and water it as well. And that's the etrog. If we want to be homiletic, if we want to darshan, you're coming off of Yom Kippur, you remain that you know you came to great levels of accomplishment, of repentance, but to grow, it's not enough. No one by itself, just letting a person think that the person's going to grow on his own, that's not the way. You got to water it. You got to nourish. You got to feed it. You got to be on top of it. You got to be concerned for your grandson getting married. That's how you got to make moves. Talking about, right, Mr. Haber. You can't just say things are going to happen by itself. You got to be physically involved, just like you got to be physically involved in making the etro grow properly. Can't just say, I'll leave it out to the rain. Rain will take care of it. No, it needs the water. That's also maybe a symbol of the person. You got to constantly feed it. And also, we know that Ein Mayim Ela Torah. The rabbis say that water also refers to Torah. You know, when you want, because Torah, water is the lifeline of a person. Torah is the life. You have to feed it. You have to go ahead and feed Torah to the people, to the fruit, to the children, and that's how you're going to grow. Just a little homiletic idea, connecting the. You like that, Max? Connecting, and that's the unique thing about that road. Okay, so let's see the Gemara. The Gemara says. Even Ase Omer Al Tiki Hada El Ido Shekim Belosh Yavani Korin Be. There was etrog before Moshe. I mean, etrog has been around since the Hashem created the trees. But the question is, where do we see where do we see in the pasuk itself that etrog means morning mark?
Morning, Rabbi.
Where do we see in the pasuk itself, in the verse itself, that it alludes to this idea that the word creates Adam means an etrog? Where do we see it in the word? We know this tree existed from the first, from the beginning of when the time God created trees. But the question is, where do we see in the verse? Where is the merge that these words creates Hadar have to do with etrog? It sounds like a beautiful fruit. Where do we see etrog? So now the Gemara says, and we know it means etrog because that's the oral tradition handed from Moshe Rabbeinu. He explained the Torah. Meaning when the Torah says something, the Torah says eye for an eye, you would think it means literally an eye for an eye. But it doesn't mean eye. If someone knocks out someone's eye, you don't knock out the guy's eye who knocked out the guy's eye. You have to pay the money for the eye. Yet the Torah wrote eye for an eye. There's a lesson, there's a reason why the Torah wrote it in such a fashion, but it came with explanation that an eye for an eye means the value of an eye for an eye. So the Torah was given with an explanation. So the explanation, when the Torah writes the words creates Hadah, the explanation was that fruit is referring to an etrog. But could we see it alluded to in the verse itself? So now the Gemara says this new answer. The new answer is because Hadar is connected to the word idur. Idur is water. And this etrog tree, an etrog tree requires not only rainwater, but it requires you. It needs a lot of water. It requires you to feed it, to water it. In Greek, korin lamayim hidur. In Greek, in the Greek language, when you want to refer to water, what's the word that they refer to as water? I mean, in Spanish, you want to say one is uno, right? When you want, in Greek, when you want to refer to water, you call it. It's connected to this word of hadar. It's called hidor. Ve'izehi, which is the tree, the one tree, shegodal al kol mayim, that needs, in order for it to grow properly, it needs rainwater, and you have to, and irrigation water. You must feed it. Havi'oma zeo etrog. But etrog only, it seems, but it seems that etrog is unique. That it must, in order for it to grow, you must water it besides the rainwater. It seems that that other trees, the rainwater would be sufficient to sustain it properly. But the etrog needs your involvement. You're watering the etrog, the tree. That's how some understand the Gemara when it says shegadal al kol mayim, that the etrog grows and relies, as you see, relies both on the irrigation water and the water, the rainwater. That's the etrog. If humans would leave an etrog tree and not water, it seems that it will not grow properly. That's what it would that's what it would not grow properly. Just like we said, the symbol mark, we said the symbol of the etrog tree, morning Adam, is etrog trees. We're saying just like a person as a fruit. If you don't water the person, you don't water is Torah is considered water as compared to water. If you don't water the person, you don't get involved in helping a person grow, they're not going to grow properly. If you don't get involved, and that's the idea coming off of Yom Kippur, we wanted to say you have to be actively involved in watering the fruit, the children, the children, that's the things that grow. You have to constantly water them in order for them to grow properly. Now, some explain, you see, it's interesting, this phenomenon that in Greek, the Greek language refers to water in the way that the Torah wrote the words using the Hebrew, the word of the Torah. And you could say a lot of languages, took from the, Torah, a lot of words in many languages that have biblical sources. And you could say that in Greek, this is, they picked up on this word of the Torah, and they used it, they adapted that word into their language. That's how you could explain the idea that in Greek, this biblical word is used in the Greek language. That's one way you could explain. One of the comments, the Shlah says that the Torah, the language of the Torah is Hebrew. It's Lashon HaKodesh. When Hashem created the world, there was only Lashon HaKodesh. It was only the Hebrew language. But as you recall, then there was this generation of Haflaga, this generation that was united to go against God. They built the Tower of Babel. They wanted to go ahead and go up against God. And God mixed them up, and he mixed up the words of Hebrew words into other languages, and they stopped, and the people stopped understanding each other, and therefore there were certain words that originated from the Torah that when they got mixed up, and the people they created their own languages, they took from the Torah language. Good morning, Aaron. That is the opinion of the Shlah. Okay, let's continue in the Gemara. The Gemara continues. Yes. You want to talk a little louder because everybody wants to hear your holy voice. Okay, we have to see. Yeah, obviously that's not our tradition that we do. Yeah, but we have to look at the halachas, Gemaras and Megillah that discusses. You have to look at the Gemara on that. Okay. Shel Ashera Mishel Ira Nidachas. We are on 35A2. Okay. 35A2. Shel Ashera Mishel Ira Nidachas. If a lulav came, or now we're talking about etrog, and etrog came from a tree that was an Asherah tree, a tree that's been there from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, a real old tree. When the Jews came into Israel, these were the trees that the Canaanim, or the nations of Israel, worshipped these trees. It's an Avodah Zarah tree, right, Adam? We got to get rid of the Avodah Zarah tree. Adam, if you could send to the group, got to get rid of the Avodah Zarah tree. And if you have fruit from that Avodah Zarah tree, and if you want to use that fruit that was used by Avodah Zarah of the non-Jews, you can't use that fruit. You can't fulfill your mitzvah. Also, shel ir hanidachat, the fruit from a city that the majority of the people worshipped idols. The Torah says if the majority of people worshipped idols in that city, those people, of course, have to be killed. And not only that, you have to, the spoils, the booty of the city, the movable items of the city are gathered in the center of the city, and you burn them. And you can't and you don't, and you don't rebuild, and the city should not be rebuilt. The city should be laid desolate. That's the law of the Torah regarding this ir hanidachat. And if you have a fruit from that city, you have a etrog from the ir hanidachat, from that city that was condemned to be destroyed, and they didn't yet burn the etrogim yet, you cannot take that etrog from that city and fulfill the mitzvah of lulav. So the Gemara says, why not? My timer. Why can't you fulfill the mitzvah with these two items? So the Gemara says, Kivan de l'sreifa klei. Both these items are awaiting burning. They're both going to be burnt. The etrogim from this city, right, Aaron? That this city that worshipped idols, that the majority of the city, those etrogim all got to come and be burnt. Going to burn all the etrogim, all the produce, all the goods of the city are going to be burnt. And it could be, maybe you have to look again. Is it because of sometimes is it because the money got to the people and that caused a lot of their problems, or whatever? We have to see why everything has to be burnt, or is it just to make the statement to the people how terrible it is when the majority of the city worships the idols, that we're going to burn all the movable items? The Torah says to burn them, but since they're standing to be burnt, and so therefore, ketute michtat shiurei, the size of the etrog is missing. We know there is a certain size for an etrog. We said the halacha states it has to be at least the minimum size of an egg. So, but if it's going to be burnt, it's like, if we look at it like it's not here. That thing is, this item is going to be burnt. It's omeid l'sreifa. So Rashi understands that since it's going to be burned, it's like we look at it like it's not here. This item is gone with not with the wind, gone with the fire, and therefore we treat it as if now it's as if it's burnt. That's the chidush, even though it's not burnt yet. You didn't burn it. It's around, but it's standing. Its life or its expectancy. It's not here. It's not gonna. It's gonna be burned. So just like you have a thing called a treifa, animal that's gonna die within a year. So we said you can't eat it. It's alive. The animal. The animal's alive now. You say, why can't I slaughter the animal? It's gonna die within a year. The Torah says that animal is going to die within a year. We look at it, we treat it in a certain sense that it's gone, and it's not, and the slaughtering will not allow you to eat it. It's not considered an avela, but whatever. The bottom line is you can't eat it. So we're gonna consider this etro that's gonna be burnt as if it's in a certain sense as if it's already burnt, and therefore you're missing in the size for the etrog. Now, not everybody, by the way, not everybody agrees to this concept that something that's going to be burnt, we look at it today as if it's burnt. At the moment, it's not burnt, right? You're going to burn it. So it seems there is a machloket between Rabbi Shimon, who holds that way, that's considered as burnt, and the Chachamim, who hold it is the Chum hold that it's not considered burnt, but yet the commentaries deal with it seems like the Chacham would agree over here that it would we would look at it as if it's. Some say that we would look at it as if it is in pieces. We would consider it. Maybe it's not considered burned. Maybe we'll look at it like it's chopped up in pieces, and therefore, if it's chopped up in pieces, therefore it's not really. It still also doesn't have the size. That's we are on 2535A2. So that is how some will explain. Yes, Max, you wanted to say something?
Um, uh, yeah, so just, and it's like its measurement is shiur is considered like crushed and or small, like small.
Or either the shear, two ways they learn the Gemara. One way they learn it, it's as if it's missing the size, but if it's like burnt, it's like ashes, it's like it's not hair, too small. Or is it because maybe we look at it like it's broken up into pieces. And broken up into pieces, it's as if you have it's in make believe it's in 10 pieces. It's also too small.
But hypothetically,
At the current state, it's a beautiful etrog. Right. It's a beautiful etrog, but the only problem is it has a date that it's going to be burnt. It's going to be burnt next week. This etrog is going to be burnt. So how do we look at it? But it's not exactly. So that's the chidush. The chidush is that even though it's not burnt now, Aaron, right? But I can't use it now because it's going to be burnt, and we treat that item. At least that's how Rav Shimon understands. He looks at the item that's going to be burnt as if it's burnt. It's like sometimes you say someone who's going to die. If sometimes we look at it sometimes as in some areas as if it's dead, and some areas we don't look at it like it's dead. Right? If a person kills, there's certain thing, if he kills, there's certain halachot of someone who's, where the court could give death to somebody for doing certain things, it depends. It depends on if the person has a certain defect in his body, of course you're not allowed to kill such a person. But whether the court will kill someone who's going to die as a result of his defect, you can look into that halacha. But of course you can't kill it. But there's certain things that we look at the fact where it's headed. And therefore that's what the Gemara is saying over here. Right, it's considered alive. It's considered alive. But whether the court will kill somebody for murder is a different question. Of course, you're not allowed to kill the person, but whether the court will kill somebody is a different question. But we consider, of course, a person's alive. They pull the plug on somebody. That's murder. But there are certain halachot about certain defects that a person might have, that internal defects, a lung that's a hole in the lung. There's certain things the same way by a chicken has a hole in its lung. It's alive, but if you slaughter it, it's still not kosher. If it's going to die within a year, the animal has a hole in its lung. We don't look at the fact. We don't just treat it by the fact today it's alive, but it has something about it in the future that's going to happen to that animal that dictates that the Torah says you can't. That's a defect, right? So here we're treating the defect is the fact that it's going to be burnt, but not right. But you're saying you don't. I'm just showing. I understand, Mark.
Chickens damage or the cow's damage, it can never be kosher. Okay. As it stands right now, I think it put it on the table. It might be the most beautiful etrog I've ever seen.
Right.
And it's going to be burned, so I can't make a beracha on it now.
Right. That's right. It's going to be burnt.
It's a perfect etrog.
Right. It's perfect, but it has a I'm calling it a history or a future, whatever you want to refer to it. But I'm saying that it's labeled. It has a label on it.
Like what is the time frame? Is there a statute like eventually, the whole subverted city is going to have to be
burnt,
but it's going to take a while to burn everything. So it may take a few years.
Why are we burning it?
Because the majority of the city worshipped idols. The Torah said that.
But if you don't burn it and you just say, you know what, it's from a tree that they worship idols, that's not true.
Again, a tree to worship idol, right? But here,
burn it or not. It's from a
yeah. But we had a Gemara. But we had a Gemara earlier, if it's an Asherah tree, the Gemara said, yeah, but the Gemara said earlier, if an the Gemara specifies what's specific about an Asherah tree. Doesn't say, the Gemara earlier discussed what about other avodah zarah, but our Gemara, the Gemara here is talking about specifically an Asherah tree, an etrog from a tree that's gonna be burnt. Specifically an avodah zarah, because either it was this tree, because the Torah says an Asherah tree has to be burnt. The Torah says what you got to do to an Asherah tree, you have to burn it as soon as you can. Right. Only here the but it's more than the avodah zarah. Here because the Torah says this specific avodah zarah has to be burnt. Not all avodah zarah has to be burnt. This specific avodah zarah, the Torah says has to be burnt, and because of that sentence that it has on this etrog, it affects the law today, even though the etrog is beautiful, gorgeous. But I can't. But because of that, because
the solution to the avodah zarah, maybe we can use etrog avodah zarah, not because it's burning.
Again, but then Gemara says it applies to ir hanidachat. The etrog wasn't used as avodah zarah. Yet, no, but not the case of the etrog from the Asherah tree was. But the case of the city that's condemned, the condemned city, the etrog has nothing to do with being burnt with avodah zarah. The condemned meaning to say this people worshipped idols. This etrog was not worshipped. The etrog from the city that the majority of the people worship idols, that you got to go ahead and kill those people, destroy the city, destroy all the booty of the city. Though the booty was not used for idols, it happens to be the resources of the members of the city. And because it's the resources of the members of the city, that has to be burnt. So nothing to do with idols. The actual movable items. It's the people that worship the idols, but these idols weren't. Etrog is the booty, exactly. And therefore, the one area, and the etrog has to be burnt. Because it has to be burnt, the Gemara, we consider it today. That etrog today. Good morning, welcome. Thank you for joining us. As if it's gone today. It's gone. You know, there's a discussion. If somebody throws something from the roof, the Gemara in Baba Kama discusses this. You go on the roof of the building, and you throw a glass vase down. And I have good aim. And while it's on the way down, I take a bat and I break it. I break the vase before it reaches the ground. The vase is going to reach the ground. In a minute, 10 seconds, it's going to reach the ground. But I broke it before it reached the ground. Who's responsible for that vase? The guy who the guy stole a vase. Well, let's say the guy stole somebody's vase and he threw it down from the roof. And I broke, but I took a bat while it's in the air and I broke it. Is it considered the guy on the top of who threw the vase down, or is it me who actually broke the vase? Good question. I think the Gemara says it's the guy who threw the vase down from the roof. Because when I took my bat, I broke it's called mana tvirat tava. I broke something that's broken. What do you mean, Rabbi? It didn't break it. It's still in the air. It's in perfect shape yet. We could somehow catch it. But the fact it's in perfect shape. But the fact that I we have to see if the difference will be if it's any difference if you can catch it or not. But we could view something as broken before it's actually broken. Mr. Haber, yes. Right. That's exactly. So therefore we find such a what that I just gave? Yeah, okay. If you squeeze the rabbi, you'll get something out of the rabbi, right? That's what I tell them. Right? You got to Mark. That's why I need you to, you know what I mean? You gotta.
So I love that version too. I would love to know which Gemara.
The Gemara Baba Kama. I think should be in the first paragraph on Baba Kama.
So just like a man.
But I just want to say one more thing. There might be, there might be differences if it could be caught, it can't be caught. I mean, we're not going to get into the details of that. I don't know that. Yeah, yeah.
There's men on death row. He's gonna kill tomorrow. And yet he's still capable of accounting for a minion, you know.
Right.
But so there's a way potentially that he'll escape that sentence, and then he'll be he'll be freed and acquitted. So I would like to know, is there a method of potentially saving these etrogene from condemnation?
No, once the city, we're talking, just to bring everyone up to date, we're talking about a city that the majority of the people worshiped idols. And of course, there's many halachot regarding the city. And one of the things the Torah says, besides those people who were warned, you don't kill anybody unless they were warned. They were warned not to worship idols, and they intentionally violated the warning. They worshiped the idols. And there's a majority of the city. The Torah says those people have to be killed, but you have to also burn all the booty of the city. All the movable items of the city have to be burnt. It's a very strong punishment. So we're talking about, if you have it now, there are loose etrogim from that city, and they have to be burnt. And they didn't burn. They're going to be burning it next week. Whatever. They're going to be doing the burning next week. They're putting together everything. It'll take a few days. And now it's Sukkot. Can I fulfill the mitzvah using that etrog? I mean, see, it's a Mishnah, right? So the question is anyone going to argue on this Mishnah? Let me explain one point. Mark is correct in his question that there is the Chachamim. There are rabbis that disagree with this concept to say that something's going to be burnt. It's going to be, if we look at it, the fact that it's going to be burnt next week, we consider as if it's burnt today. If it's burnt today, you don't have an etrog here today. Even though you see the etrog, but we look at it like it's not there. It's as if it's not there, and therefore you don't get credit. Because etrog, you need a certain size for an etrog, right? It has to be a minimum of an egg. So if the etrog is, if we consider something that's going to be burnt, like, there's not the concept is you killed a dead man. Sometimes if there's a concept, if someone who's, let's say, who's going to die, he has, you might have the concept that you killed someone who's dead, or someone who's an item that's going to be broken. It's like you broke a broken item, right? So again, we said when a human being, there's certain, depends on the situation, whatever the situation is. So do we look at the etrog today as if it's burnt? So the Chachamim say we don't consider in general something that's going to be burnt as if it's burnt. We don't look at it. We don't treat something that's going to be burnt as it's burnt. But it would seem there's other reasons why here they would admit that it would be a problem. Because the Mishnah here did not bring any dissenting opinion. Right, because here for some reason they would still say it's a problem, because the Gemara, the Mishnah does not show that anybody argues on this law of the etrog from this tree or this condemned city. So it seems like it's a united opinion regarding this specific halacha. Burnt. It's going to be burnt. We consider it. The status of the item. Now, it's already taken on the future. But the obvious question is, right? The question is obviously, why would the Chachamim admit in this case? Why would the rabbis say, in general, who they don't consider something that's going to be burnt, but for some reason they consider here that it is yes. What, Ariel, what's your question?
You think this learning
Right. At least all the booty is going to be burnt. Right. All the movable items are going to be burnt. At first, it's talking about Jewish people, Jewish cities. So those cities are not Jewish. The case of Eredachas is a city, a Jewish city, that the majority of the people went off the derech, and the majority of the people worship idols. But it's not, doesn't say about a non-Jewish city such a halacha. What was that? Yeah, that's because that's the item itself, because maybe they might use it for idols. They use the wine for idols. They pour the wine in front of idols. Morning, to see you. And so that would be, but here we're talking about they didn't use this etrog for idols. This is a regular etrog that grew in the city, and now they took it off the tree. But it's a city that's condemned. Because it's a city that's condemned, you can the etrog is going to be burnt. Since it's going to be burnt, you can't use it. Maybe Monday we'll do a little more research over the weekend to see why the rabbis who generally hold something that's going to be burnt, we don't look at it. We don't look at the status now. Yet they seem to agree when it comes to etrog that this etrog is going to be burnt because it is part of a city that was condemned. Because most of the people worship idols, and you got to burn all the booty in it. Yet they're going to still consider it a problem to use that etrog before the city was before they burnt it. Is it clear? Okay.
What's a Jewish city?
A Jewish city is, let's say, where majority, I presume, the majority of the inhabitants are Jewish. It's a good question, Anna. We have to look at the laws of Ir Hanidachat. You know, what is the laws of Ir Hanidachat? You know, is this, you know, what kind of city, what the makeup of the city to consider that it would be burnt? That's a great question. Exactly. You know, there are a lot of details, you know, regarding, you know, to meet that requirement of a city that the majority of the people worship idols. Okay,
The majority of people are Jewish, and the majority of people worship idols.
Right.
Majority of Jews, just like 30%.
No, it's not Jewish.
Then it won't be a Jewish city.
It could be 51% Jews.
Again,
Of the Jews.
again, we have to see more exactly what's the makeup of the city. You know, is it a city that's, you know, just majority Jews, all Jews, not, you know, at this point it needs a lot of looking into exactly. Our Gemara here is not focusing on that, but that's definitely a great subject to look at. Okay, we want to wish everyone a great day, a great Shabbat, Shabbat Shalom, and what comes from Jews? I mean, generally, but there is such thing as it's a different type of tumah. They have different type of contamination. But it's up to whatever you think. I think people, they went upstairs. Yes.
You would be a biscuit.